In this video, I'm gonna show you exactly how I create 3D mockups in Blender. I've read the comments and a lot of you are really curious and interested to know like the step-by-step of how I do it. So I will show you how I model a simple 3D box packaging in Blender and how I place my designs and die lines from Illustrator to my 3D model, how I set up the lighting, background, and also camera angles, how I create interesting textures like embossing, and how I post-process in Photoshop. For this one, a basic understanding of the Blender interface would be very helpful so it's easier for you to follow along, but I will try my best to be very elaborate. I'll explain the steps, the keyboard keys that I use, and make this video as beginner friendly as possible. Okay guys, so let's start the tutorial. Okay, so the first thing that you want to do is to go to the official Blender website and download the software. Ideally, you want to use the current version to make the most out of the features. Okay, so this is how it looks like when you first open the program. You just have to click anywhere to continue. So before we start, there are things that I like to do to set up the workspace. So go over here to the render tab and then change this to cycles. This one produces a more realistic output. And then we'll change the device to GPU compute. That way the GPU is doing most of the processing. Okay, so scroll down to sampling. And for simpler renders, we can change the sample size to a much smaller value. Let's try 120. Then let's scroll down further to color management. And you want to use sRGB. And then change this to a high contrast value, like this one. So for this tutorial, I enabled the screencast keys. That way you can see here in the corner the keys I'm pressing as I'm doing the work. Okay, so first, let's select the box. And this is called a default cube. So let's click N to open this tab and then go to Item. Over here is the actual dimensions of the box, and I like to work with their actual dimensions. So Blender works in 3 axes. It is 3-dimensional. So think of X or the red line as the length, Y or the green line as the width, and Z or the blue line as the height. So for this box, let's set the length to 2.25 inches. The width is the same, 2.25 inches. And the height, let's set this to 4 inches. Okay, so right now it's way too small. So what you can do is you can use your mouse scroll to zoom in and zoom out. You can also hold down Shift and the scroll to pan or move your view. And then if you press 1, this shows us the front view. The 3 is for the side view. And then press 7 for the top view. So these are helpful shortcuts that can speed up your workflow. You can also hold your scroll to rotate the view. Okay, so right now we are in object mode. But if you press tab, this brings us to the edit mode. Now you want to select this one, the edge select mode. And then we select this segment, then press V to rip or cut. So sometimes it happens, but you can undo and make sure that you place your cursor somewhat above to achieve something like this. Then you can press right click to release. Then press 7 to go to top view, then press G to go to the move tool. Then press Y to constrain along that axis. And as you can see, it moves only along the green line. Then move this slightly to create a little bit of space. Then again, let's press 1 to go to the front view. So right now we are only seeing the exterior, but if we go here and click this icon, we go to the X-ray view, so it's like transparent. With the edge selected, press E to extrude, then Z to constrain it along the Z axis. So this will be the flap of the box that you tuck into. So let's exit edit mode by pressing Tab and then Command or Control A, apply scale. So doing that will prevent issues related to scale moving forward. So as you can see, the edges are very sharp, and in reality, the edges should be slightly curved. So to do that, let's go to the modifiers tab, and then let's search for bevel. So right now, it's looking weird, but we can adjust the values. Let's adjust it to a smaller value like 0.001 meter. And you can see here how it affects the edges. Then to smoothen this, what we can do is adjust the segments as well. So here we can change this to a higher value, let's say 4. So I will turn the modifier on and off so you can see the before and after. And then what we want to do is to right click and then click Shade Smooth. This will make the surface much smoother. Okay, so let's click 0 and this brings us to the camera view. So for now, click the camera boundary and then press G while holding scroll. And then you can move your mouse to zoom in and out. You can also click the camera bounce and then press G and Z to move along the Z axis. So now we have the base model of the box packaging. So this is a pretty simple model, and let me know if you want a different 3D model for another video. So for the next part, we will now place the design to our box here, and this process is called UV unwrapping. And then to make it easier, let's set up the workspace first. Okay, so we need to open some windows first. You can go to this corner and hold your cursor to split the view. Then let's repeat that to split this panel further into two. So the upper corner should be the UV editor. And then this one will be the shader editor. So we'll leave this for now and we'll go back to Illustrator. So I have here a die line that we will use for this project. I will also leave a link to the file so you can use it for this project. So let's export this file. And then I like to export another copy without the lines. So toggle this off and then export. Okay, so let's go back to Blender. What you can do is locate your file and then bring it to Blender by simply drag and dropping it here in the shader editor, like this. So let's go over and scroll to the end. So right now we are in the solid view and we have other views like the material preview and the render view. But for now, let's use the material preview mode. So going back here, we just simply connect this one to the base color. So as you can see, once we've done that, the box also changed. Right now, the design is awkwardly placed, but we'll work on that in a second. Okay, so now I want you to go to the UV editor, zoom out using scroll, and move it around. Let's click the box, then press tab to go to edit mode. A while ago, we used the edge select. Now we are using the face selection. Then click the front face of the cube or the box. Then what you're going to do is unwrap using U and then hit unwrap conformal. So the face change again. So press A to select all and then S to scale, G to move this around, and our goal is to move this to the corresponding face of the die line right here. Okay, and then we'll do the same for the rest of the faces. When you are doing the placement, make sure that you hover to the UV workspace and not on the 3D environment. And if you are seeing lines, don't worry because we'll fix that later. Again, use the 1, 3, and 7 keys for the different views. Okay, as you can see, this one should be rotated. So the key to rotation is R, and then you can type 90 to do the rotation. Remember to also unwrap this part of the flap as well. And then, of course, the bottom part too. So as you can see, it's starting to come together. And once everything is in their proper place, you want to go back to the shader editor. And then locate the image without the lines, this one. So I'll show you the before and after. So the next part of the process is to set up the scene. So let's go to front view, hit 1. Now I want to align the base of the box with the x-axis, so hit G, Z, and then move it upwards. Hit 0 for the camera view, click the camera GZ, and move upwards. So to set up the background, I will add a new element. So again, the key is Shift A, go to Mesh, then Plane. So right now, this is too big. So let's go to the top view and scale this down. And then now I want to elongate up the space. You can click S to scale, X to scale it along X-axis to about this size. Then with the plane selected, let's go to edit mode, then go to edge select, then select this edge. Hit E, Z, and then extrude it upwards. Now what we want to do is smoothen the corner here. So again, click this edge, then hit Command or Control B to create a bevel. Move your mouse to increase or decrease. And then you can scroll up and down to increase the number of segments. Then we want a round corner, so about 4 segments. Then let's make it a little bit smaller, about this much. So I think now is a good time to work on the lighting. So we move to the render preview, which shows the image with the influence of light, materials, and the environment. Now, if we go to our collection and click this light, it's here by default. We can then move it closer to our box. And as you can see, our light source is a bit too bright and the image is super blown out. So we need to use a lower value. Let's try 500 watts for now. So let's move this somewhere here. There are many types of lights here, but let's change this to a plane. Let's move this closer using G and Z. Then let's use 30 watts. This line shows where the line is pointing at. So to change this, we use Shift T. Then move your mouse to point it to the box. You can also change the size of the lights. So let's lower this further to 5 watts. So I will adjust the position. I want to hit the corner of the box. Okay, let's work on the background. So click the plane and in the shader editor, click new to create a new material. Then let's change the base color to a light red color. And then here we can also adjust the roughness. Lower value is for shiny materials, higher value is for matte. Let's change it to a slightly shiny value. Another thing that I like to do is to add an RGB curve. Again, hit Shift A, then search for RGB curve. We'll drop this between these two nodes. We call these nodes, by the way. And I like to lower down the curve. This is too much. Just about this much. Okay, so now we have a basic light, camera, and background setup. So for the next part, I'm gonna show you another way to light a scene using HDRI. So I want you to go to polyhaven.com. Now there are lots of options here, but I like to use the Brown Studio. Change this to 2K, then the format to HDR. Then let's download this. Then back in Blender, this drop down, change it from object to world. Okay, so let's add another node. Let's search for environment texture. Drop it here and then connect this to the background node. So what this does is like putting our object and scene to the studio. It simulates the studio's lighting and reflections. So right now it's a little bit too bright. We can also decrease the strength of the HDRI. So let's do 0.7. Let me just scale this down a bit. Let's go to the camera view, hit 0. Now, if we go to the output tab, we can change the format. Let's set this to a similar value. I also want to find a good angle to render. So once you're happy, we can set the new camera view by clicking Option or Alt, Command 0. Then adjust the camera using G. Again, you can zoom in or out by holding the scroll on your mouse. I will again adjust the lights. I also like to add an HSV or a hue saturation value. We can also change the perspective of the camera. Go to camera tab, then change the focal length. I like to use high focal length for product visualization. Then let's just move this around. I would also like to try a lighter background to help highlight the box to help separate it from the background. I think I forgot to set this to high contrast when I switch version. Okay, let's do that. So now I want to add a bit of movement. Hit R. R is for rotate. And then G to move it above the plane. Then let's find a better look for this one. So this already looks good to me, but for the next part, we'll add some details to make it more interesting. So in Illustrator, I want to copy the artboard. So let's just remove some of this for now. Okay, so in printing, sometimes we do some finishing techniques like embossing. So for this one, I want to put this line art somewhere here, and this will be the embossed part. I just remove the other parts. Then what I'll do is change the background to pure black and then turn this off. Just export this and go to Photoshop. Let's bring in the file here, and then I'll select this layer and change this to Smart Object. Now go to Filter, Blur, then Gaussian Blur. So what this does is make the embossing smoother. So we can use a small value like 1, and then let's export this one. So going back to Blender, with the box selected, go to the shader editor, and then let's move some of these nodes to give some space. Then I will add another node, that's Shift A, then look for a bump node. So connect the blue dots, bring the exported file and drag and drop it here, and then we will connect color to height. So as you can see here, the texture of the box changed. So right now, I think it's a bit too much. So let's change the scale value. Let's try maybe 0.1. So this looks good, but I want the bump to be much sharper. So we can go back to Photoshop and change the blur to like zero point 0.5. I'll export this. Then let's change the file to the new one. So as you can see, it's now much sharper. And then let's change the scale to 0.15. So you can also click invert if you want an impression or an indented one. But for this project, we will do an embossed effect. Let's try zero point 0.2. Okay, so you can rotate this using R and then Z and then another Z to rotate it along its own axis. And then by doing this, you can check the other sides of the box. Okay, so I'm back in Illustrator to make some changes. I want the gradient to be more obvious, so I'm adjusting the colors. Then let's export this. So in Blender, let's change it to the new one. So sometimes you just need to play around the curves and saturation values to get an accurate one. And at this point, I'm just playing around the values. You can also change the RGB curves individually as well. So currently, I'm super happy with this one. What we just need to do is render this, and we do that by hitting F12. So this screen will pop out and we just wait for it to finish. And there's also an indicator here of the progress. So once it's done, we just need to save this and do the last step, which is post processing. So for this render, we won't be doing much. Then adjust this a bit. I will also add a filter. So go to filter and then sharpen. So to help separate the box from the background even further, let's duplicate this layer, then select subject. Then let's add a clipping mask. I will use the gradient tool to add a gradient, change this to a circular gradient, change this to this, then change the ends to white. Change the position, and also work on the opacity. You can also add another layer of hue saturation to adjust the color of the background. I will adjust this to a slightly more vibrant color. And then for a finishing touch, I'm adding this sparkle from another project. And then I will put this here, then adjust the opacity. And we are finally done. Here is the final render of this 3D box packaging. I hope that this is very helpful. It's my first time doing a Blender tutorial, so let me know if everything is clear and if my pacing is just right. Again, thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll see you in the next one.